From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South. I am Kijan Haynes. We begin in Mexico, where another political candidate has been murdered. Fernando Puron was the candidate for the federal deputy of... He was candidate for federal deputy for the Institutional Revolutionary Party in the Mexican state of Coahuila. He was shot to death on Friday night after participating in an electoral debate. The murder was captured on CCTV footage. That makes 112 politicians killed in Mexico in the lead-up to the elections on July 1st. Voters in Mexico also say they've been bombarded with negative calls and messages about leftist Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador. People complained on social media about the calls discouraging them from voting for him. The National Electoral Institute and the Specialized Prosecutor for the Attention of Electoral Crimes said they will investigate the origin of the telephone recordings. Lopez Obrador said the calls are a dirty war against him.
Press 1 if you think Andrés Manuel López Obrador will call for violence if he loses the elections. Press 2 if you think López Obrador won't call for violence if he loses the election. Did you know that this is not the first time that López Obrador campaigns call for violence? A week ago, one of his advisors said that there will be disturbances if López Obrador loses. Press 1 if you knew this, press 2 if you didn't know this. Thank you for your participation.
Gracias por tu participación.
Now our correspondent in Mexico City, Eduardo Martinez, has more.
Unfortunately, I have to inform that another congressional candidate, Fernando Puron, has been murdered. On July 1st, about 89 million Mexicans are expected to vote for a new president and also to renew the lower house, the Senate, 9 local governments, and 3,000 federal and local positions. The National Electoral Institute has requested the federal government to reinforce security measures to help candidates to carry out their electoral campaigns peacefully. The Revolutionary Institutional Party has condemned this recent murder and canceled all their political rallies in the Coahuila state in memory of Fernando Puron.
Eduardo Martinez there in Mexico. On Friday evening, Brazil's Workers' Party held a launch for the pre-candidacy of former President Lula da Silva in Minas Gerais. Governors, leaders of parliamentary benches all attended, as well as Senator Gleisi Hoffmann and Dilma Rousseff. Fundraising efforts have begun. The donations window will close on August 15th, which is the deadline for presidential hopefuls to register as candidates. Now, despite his conviction and imprisonment, Lula has topped just about every 2018 electoral poll conducted.
And so I am preparing, with faith in God and with much confidence, for the day of reuniting with the beloved Brazilian people. And there is no way that this reunion won't happen. See you soon, my people. Long live Brazil, long live democracy, long live the Brazilian people.
Jamaica's junior foreign minister, Pernell Charles Jr., has dismissed reports that Jamaica voted earlier this week to suspend Venezuela from the Organization of American States. Jamaica was listed as one of 19 member states that voted in favor of a U.S. resolution to call an extraordinary assembly to vote on the suspension of Venezuela's membership. 4 member states voted against the resolution and 11 abstained. However, Charles said, quote, "At no point was any resolution tabled to expel any member from the OAS. Jamaica openly called for dialogue and not the immediate suspension of Venezuela," end quote. In Guatemala, the residents near the Fuego volcano now have to contend with mudslides after heavy rains. Authorities warn that due to the rains, there are generally strong mud flows in the dry ravine, which can block roads between communities. They advised that the mudslides could be dangerous as they are hot and emit steam and sulfur. They can also drag trees and boulders with them. So far, there have been no reports of injuries due to the mudslides. Our correspondent in Esquintela, Santiago Boton, has more.
Nos encontramos en el centro de la aldea El Rodeo, Escuintla.
We are in the community of El Rodeo in the department of Escuintla, where an operation center used by firefighters and rescuers is being shut down 6 days after the eruption of the Fuego volcano. This tragic event is gradually being forgotten by authorities. Meanwhile, many survivors are still trying to find missing relatives under rubble in order to give them appropriate burial.
Let's take a short break now. Join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. In Colombia, the FARC political party reported that detained member Jesus Santrich is being denied his fundamental rights while in detention. In a public statement, the FARC says that 60 days after being arrested, the Special Jurisdiction for Peace has failed to provide sufficient judicial processes to allow Santrich to plead his innocence and avoid extradition to the United States. The FARC call on authorities to respect the Constitution. Santrich has been detained since April, accused of drug trafficking by the United States, which formally requested his extradition on Thursday. The United Nations General Assembly voted on Friday to elect Germany, Belgium, South Africa, the Dominican Republic, and Indonesia for a 2-year term in the Security Council starting on January 1st. Foreign Minister of the Dominican Republic, Miguel Vargas, spoke after the vote, saying the country accepted the important responsibility of protecting the region. He said that while on the Security Council, their agenda would center around the promotion of human rights, food security, the role of women and youth, and defense of the environment. In Ecuador, President Lenin Moreno has accepted the resignation of Foreign Minister Maria Fernanda Espinosa, who was elected on Tuesday to preside over the UN General Assembly. In a statement, the National Communications Secretariat reported that the president will appoint Jose Valencia as foreign minister of the country. Valencia is a career diplomat who represented his country as ambassador to the Organization of American States in 2017. He also served as vice minister of foreign affairs. Ecuador's National Criminal Court has rejected the latest appeal by former Vice President Jorge Glass. Denise Herrera reports.
The National Court of Justice rejected the appeal filed by former Vice President Jorge Glass. The court stated that the arguments presented by the defendants are not valid.
This is the judicialization of politics at its best. Here there are people standing up fighting this disgrace and being politically persecuted.
The defense lawyers of Jorge Glass have rejected the resolution presented by the court, and they also affirm the ex-vice president will continue the struggle for his release. Also, Eduardo Lor said if it is necessary, they will appeal the charges before the Inter-American Commission.
We're going to present a cassation appeal before the National Court of Justice within what is established in the Penal Code.
While the audience was developing, several supporters of the former vice president gathered outside the court to demand his release, including some members of the Citizen Revolution movement.
The Ecuadorian people are with Jorge Glass, and we are here with the militancy.
Jorge Glass is the highest-ranking politician to be convicted in the scandal that has spread across Latin America and further afield. The president has removed his duties from him, and he has been in preventative custody since October. The scandal has tainted politicians in several other countries. Denise Herrera, Telesur Quito, Ecuador.
After 2 weeks of conflict, the University of El Alto in Bolivia is beginning talks with the government to try to end its strike and to return to classes. Our correspondent in Bolivia, Freddy Morales, has more details.
The talks between representatives of the Public University of El Alto and authorities from the government were established to solve the demand for a greater budget. The demonstrations have been going on for more than 20 days. After 3 hours of meeting, it was officially announced that there was an agreement to create work commissions to deal with the details of the university demands. The university representatives asked to suspend the meeting to consult with their people about the work commissions.
Peru's Congress has failed to dismiss Kenji Fujimori along with 2 other congressmen. The 3 had already been suspended for trying to buy votes to prevent the impeachment of former President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, who resigned in March.
The Peruvian Congress voted to suspend Congressman Kenji Fujimori, Bienvenido Ramirez, and Guillermo Bocangel on Wednesday, in a vote promoted by Kenji's sister, Keiko. However, the next day, a motion to dismiss Kenji, who is the son of the former president Alberto Fujimori, failed to get enough votes. That means Kenji can still run for office in 2021, and he maintains his parliamentary immunity as well. Kenji, Ramirez, and Bocangel will remain suspended until the criminal proceedings against them come to an end.
I want to address my sister Keiko and tell her congratulations. Here, you have my head on a platter. What we have lived through today has been totally disgusting.
Even though the progressive parties voted in favor of the suspension, they believe this process will only be completed when the other 3 legislators from the Keiko Fujimori bloc who were involved in a corrupt deal to save Kuczynski are also punished.
The Congress cannot be used to punish some corrupt people and save others. This is what the Ethics Commission is doing. This is what happened yesterday and today when they failed to include Mr. Mamani, Mr. Tikla, and Mr. Figueroa in the investigation.
The Fuerza Popular bloc, led by Keiko Fujimori, is rebuilding its strength after suspending the 3 dissidents. They will add to their bloc the 3 legislators who take the seats left by those suspended, and then they seek alliances that allow them to keep control of the Congress.
Unfortunately, these political groups that claim to be opposed to Fujimorismo are shy and submissive groups that don't guarantee that they won't make us live another Fujimorismo dictatorship like the one in the 90s, but worse this time.
Although his sister's attempt to remove Kenji for good has failed, the Congress did vote a second time to confirm his suspension.
El Salvador's Attorney General has ordered the arrest of former President Mauricio Funes for alleged embezzlement and money laundering, in addition to allegedly covering up various illicit acts during his tenure. Funes has been in exile in Nicaragua since September 2016. He is accused of using public funds to pay for trips, home remodeling, and hospital bills, among other expenses. The Attorney General issued warrants for the arrest of 29 other people, including relatives and the former officials in his administration.
The investigation is still open. I am not going to debate about this. The evidence is not presented to the media. The evidence is presented to a court, so a judge can examine it. And that's what we did yesterday. Now we're going to wait for the trial to begin, and we hope that they will consider our evidence.
The Barbados government says they're treating the Sargassum seaweed issue as a national emergency. On Friday, they deployed the Defense Force to help clean up the beaches on the eastern and southern coasts overrun by Sargassum. Minister of Maritime Affairs and the Blue Economy, Kirk Humphrey, says the plan is to harvest the seaweed and use it for something else. The government hopes to use the seaweed as a source of energy.
Thankfully, the university invested in it because, we also got to be innovative and entrepreneurial in our attempts to deal with the problem. And thankfully, the University of West Indies has already started a lot of work in converting the seaweed into energy. In fact, they've been able to convert a lot of what we consider to be waste grass into energy. And they say the seaweed is actually producing a good deal of energy and would be very, very useful. But as Minister Prescott said, we have to harvest it at a time when it is useful.
And earlier we spoke with Nicholas Simpson. She's a marine biologist who volunteers with the Barbados Sea Turtle Project, an NGO that has been on the front line of the work to protect vulnerable marine life from being overrun by the Sargassum seaweed. Nicholas, thanks for joining us. So the minister, Kirk Humphrey, said that the Barbados government is treating the Sargassum issue as a national emergency. An adequate response, in your opinion?
Yes, I agree. I think it's definitely an adequate response, and I'm happy to see that not only Ministry of Maritime Affairs and Blue Economy, but many other of the relevant ministries are involved in the national cleanup effort. He, as you said, he's treating it as a natural emergency, but he's also saying that everyone needs to come together to clean it up, and I definitely agree. It does take the government, but it also takes us as individuals to get out there and clean it up, because there are massive quantities on our shores, and it is going to keep coming.
And more than just cleaning it up, he wanted to put it to use. He's talking about turning it into energy. Is that a viable response as well?
Yes, that most definitely is a viable response. It is an incredible resource. I mean, when it's out floating at sea, it's amazing as it serves as a habitat for many species of fish and sea turtles. But now that it's on shore, we have to use it. Many people are using it as mulch and compost. So once you wash the salt out of it and let it dry, many farmers are requesting it. But I definitely think that we need to continue exploring the avenue of turning it into biofuel. A few other people are doing research on how they can develop other products out of it, but Barbados needs to generate economic activity, and this is a way in which they can do it. So I think Sargassum is gold, and we definitely should be utilizing it.
And this has been happening over the last 4 or 5 years. Now, is this what we can expect forever? Is there any way to stop this influx of Sargassum?
Since 2011, the Caribbean shores have been plagued with the influx of Sargassum seaweed. It's hard to say whether it's going to continue forever, but most definitely for the rest of this season, it is going to continue, and probably for the next few years. Many oceanographers have tracked the Sargassum, and it's coming from 2 primary areas, one in the north of the equator, and this other source from the south of the equator in Brazil. And they believe that due to warming ocean temperatures as well as increased nutrients, this is what is causing this massive bloom to occur. So humans are partially responsible for it. Yes, it's a natural phenomenon, but because of our actions, we are speeding it up. So whether you believe in climate change or not, temperatures of the oceans are warming, and as more nutrients are coming down from land-based sources of pollution, such as agricultural runoff, this is causing the Sargassum to bloom more. So definitely can expect to see it for another few years. I can't say whether forever or not.
Moving on now. Miguel Iglesias, the director of the prestigious Contemporary Dance of Cuba company, has received the National Dance Award 2018. Our correspondent Fabiola Lopez in Havana tells us about his life and work.
Iglesias' mother wanted him to learn piano while his father trained him to become a swimmer. Instead, he ended up doing what he really wanted to do in life, dancing and acting.
For me, Iglesias is the essence of dance. To have him here is a great experience.
According to the Contemporary Ballet of Camagüey, Iglesias is the brain and heart of the Cuban Contemporary Dance Company. Without traditional academic training, he was the first dancer of Cuban television.
This was 51 years ago, but I still haven't forgotten it.
His thirst for knowledge brought him to be the protagonist of the work of renowned Cuban choreographers like Alberto Méndez, Iván Tenorio, and Gustavo Herrera. He has been directing the Contemporary Dance of Cuba company for more than 30 years.
The Contemporary Dance of Cuba is a dance company that takes risks, that looks at the future while keeping tradition in mind. I can't forget the lesson of the Greeks and the Africans. I am a citizen of the world, and that is why contemporary dance is a Cuban and a global company at the same time.
For his dancers, Iglesias is an institution.
He's a very intelligent person, opinionated. He can talk about anything. He gives you explanations, feedback. He has a very open mind.
He has experience, wisdom, courage to bring his company ahead, despite all the day-to-day problems. He asks a lot from us. He is very demanding and brings out of every dancer his and her own individuality, his and her own body intelligence. He gave me the chance to be who I am on stage, and to live many other lives according to each role I have to play.
After being awarded the National Dance Award 2018, Iglesias said that the success of his dance company cannot be found in just one person or author, but in all the people who are part of the project. He also revealed what the dream of his life is.
To die on stage. This is the dream of my life.
Now join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. G7 leaders met today in a working session in Quebec, Canada. U.S. President Donald Trump arrived late for the working session on gender equality chaired by Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The U.S. President will also depart early, missing a session on climate change, clean energy, and the health of the oceans. He will also miss the closing news conferences where leaders are likely to discuss Trump's suggestion that Russia be readmitted to the G7. Tensions remain over his decision to impose tariffs on steel and aluminum imports.
Well, I think the minimum would be relationship. You'd start at least a dialogue. Because, as a deal person, I've done very well with deals. What you want to do is start that. Now, I'd like to accomplish more than that. But at a minimum, I do believe at least we'll have met each other. We will have seen each other. Hopefully we will have liked each other, and we'll start that process. So I would say that would be the minimal. And the maximum, I think you know the answer to that. But I think that will take a little bit of time.
That was U.S. President Donald Trump talking about his plans to meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Singapore very soon. Moving on, so in Berlin, thousands of people marched in support of Palestine on Al-Quds Day in Berlin. Protesters held banners demanding justice for the Palestinian people with signs that read, "Jerusalem is the capital of Palestine." The march encountered small groups of counter-protesters who chanted slogans and held banners in support of Israel. A strong police presence followed the rally to prevent confrontations. According to local media, there were over 2,500 demonstrators.
Since 13 years ago, Israel kills children. elderly people, humans, young people, everyone. Politicians could do something, but they don't do anything. Why? Because of pressure. Because of the pressure they have on their shoulders. They could do something about it, but they say whatever.
And finally, Brazilian football player Neymar is set to start his first match since suffering a foot injury in Brazil's last pre-World Cup friendly against Austria. The star forward, who fractured his foot and sprained his ankle while playing for his club Paris Saint-Germain in February, returned to action last Sunday when Brazil won 2-0 against Croatia. And that brings us to the end of this news brief. These and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram for Telesur English. I'm Kijan Haynes. Thank you for watching.